everyone, welcome back to the Get Marketing Podcast. I am John, your host, and I am here to help you get marketing in the digital space. Well, I am so excited this morning to have on a good friend of mine, Mark Scarbrough, founding partner with MainMast Financial. Mark, it's so good to be with you this morning.
John, thanks for having me.
Well, I think this is a really interesting conversation. In the pre-show, when we were kind of talking through some pieces, one of the things that came up for our conversation today is when business owners look to start a new venture or a founder gets into a startup, there's probably something that they miss initially that you said, hey, this is the number one financial mistake you can make when starting a business. So I kind of wanted to lead in the show with that because I think, hey, that's where that's one of the biggest things that we kind of forget. We have great ideas, but then we forget this one thing. So could you share that with the audience today?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges that we see with startup business owners is they're undercapitalized. That's not a sin, to be undercapitalized. It's hard to raise money when you're first starting out, but business owners really underestimate the cost of goods and services and employees, and if they have to rent space, what that's going to look like. So if I could give anybody any advice, whatever they think it's going to cost to start a business, add 10%.
Got it. That makes sense. So you kind of laid out a couple of things for me when we were talking through this topic that, business owners potentially don't think through several different areas of how to grow their business financially, but not only just the business, but also their personal financial growth as they grow a company. I mean, we've heard this a lot, right? Where, a business owner has a company, has a couple of employees, and he's making, $30,000 a year when he has take-home pay. How do you secure yourself from a financial perspective? And what are, kind of some of the guidelines you might be able to use to not only set yourself up to be financially secure now, but also financially secure in the future?
I heard a quote, and I can't exactly remember how it goes. It was Eisenhower, and they were quoting him after the invasion of Normandy on D-Day. And he said something to the effect of, once the first shot is fired, the plan is useless, but the process of planning is invaluable. So there are really five main areas, broadly speaking, that business owners should think about. Business planning, so that would be a formal business plan. And I know it's tedious, and most of the business owners that are out there don't want to take the time to do it. But a business plan would include what your goals are and also kind of what the competition in your space looks like. Risk management.
Sure.
There are many things that can happen that can derail you. Business succession planning, kind of beginning with the end in mind. Is it a lifestyle business, which is going to provide an income?
Right.
Or is it an asset business where you're going to sell it at some point in time? Personal planning, and then employee benefits. How are you going to attract and retain talent on a shoestring budget when the competition, especially in this area, is going to throw a lot of money at potential employees? So what do you do to attract an employee where you might not have the capital to pay them compared to a larger competitor? So,
well, I think you bring up a couple of, you bring up some really interesting points that I think a lot of business owners may not necessarily in the beginning stages think about in terms of exit strategy, but also, like you said, retaining employees. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen in business where businesses fail is losing an employee that's an invaluable part of the process, whether that's in the production or sales, right? Great salespeople want to make money, and they're going to potentially go to a place where they're going to be able to be financially compensated for that. So when you take a look at how you retain employees, what's some strategies you can do from a business perspective to retain and grow top talent within your organization?
So the number one go-to, especially in the tech sector, we see this a lot. Different sectors do it kind of differently, but in the tech sector, the number one go-to for a business owner is, I'm going to give some equity as an incentive for this top gun talent that I'm trying to bring in on
Right.
board.
Right.
There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if you do it enough times, all of a sudden you took all the risk as the business owner and you gave away the equity of your business. And if it's a grow to sell business, you're really handicapping yourself and your family as to what your eventual payout is going to
Sure.
be as
Sure.
the owner of the business. So, one of the strategies that we suggest people consider is a concept called golden handcuffs. And
Hmm.
unlike a 401k type of benefit where you have to do it for all employees, whatever you do for one, you do for all. Golden handcuffs, you can
Right.
selectively pick individuals. And basically, it's John, if I'm trying to attract and retain you as my top talent, I'm promising to pay you a future sum if you stay with me for a period of time. So if
Got
we,
it.
maybe we
Yes.
have an yeah, maybe we have an agreement that says you got to stay with me for 5 years. If you leave one day before the fifth year, you give up this bucket of money, and every year you see that
Sure.
bucket grow,
Sure.
right? So
Right.
the concept of a golden handcuffs is, in my mind, if you pair that with a stock offering, is an attractive retention tool, and really it's riskless to the business owner because if the
Hmm.
person leaves, you don't pay them, right? So we
Right.
found it to be a pretty good strategy.
I mean, that's a fascinating concept, and it allows, I think, the visual incentive, right, of seeing that potential asset grow over time, which can be really incentivizing to employees, right? That they can see, well, I'm investing in my own future, and I think that's what people want. When you talk about ownership, right? You said, oh, business owners can give equity away, and of course, that is a way of giving ownership in the business. But I like the concept of giving ownership in the area of the business, or allowing people to derive that ownership from working, or having the ability to see something grow is sometimes just as important. I've seen this a lot, right, where you give equity to someone and then you're like, well, they don't do anything. Well, what was the incentive there, right? Because they can't. It's kind of a superfluous thing at that point. But when you give someone a vested stake in the growth and the direction of a company, that's where you can really see talent develop and grow over time, because they feel like they have some control over the direction. That to me is potentially so much more important than giving away pieces of, like you said, stock or equity at that point, but developing someone so that they can feel they have an incentivized stake in the growth and direction of the company. I think this connects to one other point that we had chatted about previously, which is, what are some areas of your business that you need to secure in the beginning stages, middle, or even all the way through against financial hard times? What are some areas that business owners may miss or make mistakes when they don't look at it from a perspective of, hey, a rainy day might come. What are the areas that I need to secure in my company?
Sure. And I want to come back to something that you said in a minute, but let me answer your question. Um, when you think about a business, I call it the 4 Ds. There are 4 Ds that you really need to kind of have in the back of your mind when you're starting. If you and I are
Hmm.
partners and you're the rainmaker and I'm the operations person, if you, the
Right.
rainmaker, are hit by the proverbial bus, then what happens to the value of the business? And by the way, I've
Mm.
got to pay out your heirs your share of the business. So we're 50-50 partners, and our business is generating, let's say it's a startup, it's generating $100,000 a year because, we're just starting. You know, I have to pay a multiple of 50% to your heirs, right? So the the
Sure.
the four
Sure.
D, the 4 Ds I look at are what happens if one of the owners or key people dies, what happens if one of the owners or key people becomes disabled? That's actually more expensive than death because if we're partners and
Mm.
you're 50% equity owner and you can't show up for work because of a sickness or an accident, I still have to pay you. Right? What does that do to
That's
the
right.
cash
Yeah.
flow? What does that do to the cash flow of the business? Um,
Sure.
what the third D is divorce, and people don't think about this one. So a
Mm.
well-written buy-sell agreement is going to address all four of the things I'm talking about. But if my wife and I
Right.
divorce, there's going to be something that the judge is going to divide our assets, and all of a sudden you might be in business with my ex-spouse, and she may or may not have the same skill set that I have, when it comes to business. And then
For sure. Yeah.
the fourth D is disillusionment. If we grow the business to a certain level and a third party wants to come in and buy us out, and we have a huge payday, how are we valuing the shares of stock? What's the formula that we used? And that really should be set on the front end, because what you don't want to do with one of your partners
Right.
is you have a potential payday coming from the sale of the business, and then all of a sudden you had two different visions of how you were going to value the stock in the beginning, and it was never discussed. And that can sour the deal if you're trying to sell the business. So those are the four
That
Ds.
I mean, I think that's I like that. I think there's a lot of meat here that I think we need to create like a PowerPoint presentation and come out and deliver it, because this is fantastic. You did say you wanted to go back to something that I had said. I want to give you that opportunity.
Well, yeah, one of the other things that I look at when I'm talking to business owners is there's usually a visionary. Most entrepreneurs have a vision of what they want to do. And the person who's the visionary is not necessarily, they don't necessarily have the same skill set to execute the vision. So
Right.
one is casting a vision, one is almost an operations type person that's doing the vision. And an exercise, and it really does take a long time to do this, but if you going slow in the long run means going fast. If you take the time to really write out not a job description of what you want the job to accomplish. So that way you take personality out of it when you're hiring, right? So if
Right.
if I'm hiring for a sales position, and my expectation is that every quarter we have to have so many widgets that have been sold, it makes the conversation a little bit easier if we haven't quite hit that target ahead of time, because maybe I form a really close bond with the person, and a lot of business owners keep people longer than they probably should, because they just don't have the skill set.
Sure.
Maybe they should redirect that person within the organization. I'm not saying fire the person, but redirect the person within the organization to where their skill set fits a particular task or obligation that the business needs to do. So having written job
Hmm.
descriptions to where it's measurable for every single position that you have in your company.
It makes a lot of sense, and that, I mean, it goes beyond the kind of organizational chart, where where people sit or what they do by title, but you're really talking about what are the skills or the tasks that have to be executed by that role for the business to be successful, and then you find the individual who's able to execute on that, and that may iterate over time, and it may be that people will grow in or out of a role. Sometimes you look for a certain skill set at this point, but as your business grows, you may need something else down the line. So I love what you're saying there about looking at the role and the description, and then finding someone that can grow into that and become that key piece as the business grows and develops, and where you want to go as a company. Mark, this has been a fantastic conversation today. I've learned a lot. I hope our audience has as well. I wonder if you could kind of give the audience a few key takeaways that they might be able to digest and then maybe implement in their own companies as they continue to move forward, and obviously, listen and digest from what we've had a chance to talk about today.
Yeah. Number one key takeaway is make business fun. Nobody gets out of life alive. So there's no reason for it to be drudgery. I
Right.
mean, everybody's going to have good days and bad days, but the key is to really do something where you feel like you're having an impact and you enjoy doing it. So that's number one. The other things, don't be too hard on yourself as a business owner. The way that you move forward is to, if you want to take two steps forward, generally you have to take one step back, and we're always doing experiments in the marketplace, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Mitigate the risks that you can mitigate, because insurance is cheap. So why not do it? Don't get hung up on what the cost is, because it's very inexpensive. Make sure you're building your own
Right.
wealth outside of the business, because many business owners, especially now with some potential tax law changes, which would increase the capital gains rate, a lot of business owners are thinking about selling now, and the capital gains rate hasn't even changed yet. They're just afraid that it will, and they're finding out that their valuation wasn't as high as they had hoped it would be, or 15,
Right.
20 years ago wanted it to be. And they relied solely on that one asset sell, the business, to provide for their future with very little kind of set aside for themselves. So make sure you
Mm.
diversify outside the business. I'm not saying don't invest in business. I am saying make sure that you're taking some of the profits for yourself, and that could be in the form of a 401k. It could be cash. It could be just about anything. So as you're going about making an impact in the world, don't forget that you have a family and you have personal obligations too.
I think those are really good takeaways, in the sense of, one thing that I think a lot of times in business, I see this with individuals and even myself, and I'm sure maybe you've, experienced this. It's hard to break away from the day to day, and everything you're kind of, giving us and the audience today is take yourself out of that and think about the future. Think about where you want to be. Like, I love that you said make business fun, right? There's always going to be things that can go wrong. There's always going to be client interactions. There's going to be great clients. There's going to be the ones that you're like, why did we sign them up? But at the end of the day, like you said, making it fun and realizing, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. We're providing value. We're trying to do good while doing business. That's important, right? And those are the key pieces that when I take a look at, and digest our conversation today, that's what I want to continue to give out to the world, that we can have fun, we can do good, we can add value. And those are the types of people and companies we want to be around, are the ones that are adding value in the marketplace, having a great time while doing it. And obviously, like you said, valuing their employees and themselves, and the business owner has a vested stake in growing something that has financial sustainability. So, Mark, I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me today. Thank you so much.
John, thanks for having me. This is a blast, and I hope that this is helpful to people. And thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for the audience for tuning in. We appreciate you as well. I hope you all learned some new things today. Remember to rate and subscribe and share these episodes. Of course, we want to get the message out. Mark's got great things to say. I love having great guests on, so we want you to share those as well. If you have any questions, check out the comment section below for links to our website. There'll be some information to get in touch with Mark as well. And also, if you feel that we had a great conversation today and you'd like to engage with us, there'll be a link in the comment section below to leave a tip and engage with us. We love to hear some feedback from you as well. So take a look at that. I look forward to seeing you all get marketing in the digital space.